Blood sprayed across the sterile white tiles as the surgeon's fist slammed into the crash cart. The overhead lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, illuminating the chaos of Bay 3, where a 29-year-old nurse named Lily Monroe stood frozen, scalpel still in her trembling hand. The patient's chest was split open. The heart monitor screamed, and the most decorated trauma surgeon in Colorado was screaming louder. "You just assaulted my patient," Dr. Marcus Webb roared, his face purple with rage. "Security! Get this goddamn nurse out of my ER!" What he didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that the quiet blonde woman he was about to destroy had once performed field amputations inside a burning helicopter while insurgents fired RPGs at the fuselage. And the dying man on that table? He wasn't some random gunshot victim. He was a covert operative carrying evidence that would topple a defense empire worth $18 billion. If you want to see how a single night turned an invisible nurse into the most dangerous person in the hospital, stay with me until the very end. Like this story, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this one travels. The emergency department of Mercy Ridge Medical Center in Phoenix, Arizona smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee at 2:17 in the morning. Lily Monroe moved through the fluorescent corridors with the practiced invisibility of someone who'd learned that being noticed usually meant being blamed. Her scrubs were wrinkled from a double shift. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that hadn't been neat since midnight. She carried a tablet in one hand and an IV bag in the other, just another body in the machinery of a level 1 trauma center on a Saturday night. She preferred it that way. "Monroe, I need vitals on the OD in Bay 7, a resident called out without looking up from his chart. "Already done," Lily said quietly. "Narcan's in. He's stable." The resident blinked at her like she'd materialized out of thin air. "When did you, But she was already gone, moving toward the supply closet with the same efficiency that made her simultaneously invaluable and completely forgettable. The other nurses joked that she was a ghost. The doctors barely remembered her name. And that was exactly how Lily had survived the last 3 years since she'd walked away from a life that still woke her up at 3 in the morning, drenched in sweat and reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. She didn't talk about Afghanistan. She didn't talk about the things she'd seen in places that didn't officially exist. And she sure as hell didn't talk about why a decorated combat medic with 2 Bronze Stars and a chest full of classified commendations was now working overnight shifts in a civilian hospital under a name that wasn't entirely her own. The ER doors burst open with a blast of hot desert wind and flashing red lights. Paramedics rushed in wheeling a gurney, and Lily's stomach dropped before she even saw the patient. She knew that particular flavor of chaos, the way medics moved when they were keeping someone alive through sheer willpower and prayer. "GSW to the chest and abdomen," the lead paramedic shouted. "Multiple entry wounds suspected through and through, lost pulse twice en route." "Bay 3!" someone yelled. The trauma team converged like sharks on chum. Lily found herself moving toward the commotion, even though she wasn't assigned to that bay. Even though every instinct screamed at her to stay invisible, stay quiet, stay safe. But those instincts were newer. Older ones, deeper ones, were already cataloging the blood loss, the breathing pattern, the specific way the patient's left hand was clenched against his ribs. She knew a gut shot when she saw one. Dr. Marcus Webb was already there, snapping orders with the confidence of a man who'd spent 15 years at the top of his field. He was tall, silver-haired, and carried himself like a general. The nurses scattered around him like leaves in a storm. "Get me a chest tube kit and 2 units ONEG, now," Marcus barked. "Where's the goddamn blood gas?" Lily slipped into the bay, quiet as smoke. She positioned herself near the monitors where she could see everything without being in the way. The patient was male, mid-30s, muscular build even through the blood and shredded clothing. His face was pale as wax, but his eyes were still aware, still calculating, still fighting. "Pressure's dropping," one of the residents announced. 80 over 40. "He's tachycardic," another added. 140 and climbing. Marcus moved with practiced speed, but Lily saw it immediately. The slight hesitation, the way his eyes flicked between the monitor and the patient's chest. He was preparing for a pericardial window, standard protocol for penetrating chest trauma with suspected cardiac tamponade. Except the patient didn't have cardiac tamponade. Lily's hands tightened on the edge of the gurney. She'd seen this exact presentation 14 times in Kandahar province. The entry wounds were lower than they looked. The real damage was abdominal, not cardiac. If Marcus cut into the pericardium looking for blood that wasn't there, they'd waste 90 seconds they didn't have while the patient bled out internally from a torn hepatic artery. She opened her mouth, closed it. Stay invisible. Stay quiet. Stay safe. Scalpel, Marcus said. The nurse handed it to him. Doctor, Lily said softly. He didn't even glance at her. Not now, Monroe. The entry wounds. I said not now. She watched him position the blade, watched him prepare to cut. And something inside her, something that had been buried for 3 years under paperwork and coffee runs and the desperate need to be normal, finally snapped. If you open his chest, he's dead in 2 minutes, Lily said, louder this time. The entire bay went silent. Marcus's hand froze. He turned his head slowly, and the look he gave her could have melted steel. Excuse me? The tamponade presentation is misleading, she continued, her voice steady despite the sudden weight of every eye in the room. His jugular veins aren't distended enough. The real bleed is abdominal, likely hepatic artery, possibly splenic involvement. You need to get him to OR for an exploratory lap, not waste time on a pericardial window that's going to show you nothing. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Marcus's face went from ice to fire. You're a nurse, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You hand me equipment. You follow orders. You do not diagnose patients in my trauma bay. You're trying to get yourself fired. He turned to the charge nurse. Get her out of here. Dr. Webb, she might have a point, the resident started. Did I ask for your opinion? Marcus snapped. Monroe, you have 5 seconds to leave this bay before I call security. Lily didn't move. She looked at the patient, at the monitor, at the precious seconds ticking away. Every instinct in her body screamed that she was right. She'd triaged this exact injury profile in places where making the wrong call meant zipping your buddy into a body bag. But this wasn't Afghanistan. This wasn't a combat zone. And she wasn't Lieutenant Emily Vaughn anymore. The woman who'd once performed a field thoracotomy with a Leatherman multi-tool while mortar rounds landed 50 meters away. She was just Lily Monroe. Night shift nurse, nobody important. Out, Marcus said coldly. Now. Lily stepped back, turned, started walking toward the exit with her hands shaking and her heart hammering against her ribs. Behind her, she heard Marcus resume his commands, heard the sound of the scalpel cutting through skin, heard... The monitor went from steady beeping to a single, continuous shriek. He's coding, someone yelled. Shit, where's all this blood coming from? His pressure's bottomed out. Starting compressions. Lily stopped walking. She stood there in the middle of the corridor with her back to the chaos. Every muscle in her body wound tight as a tripwire. She could still fix this. She knew she could fix this. One cut in the right place, one clamp on the right vessel, and that man would live. But if she went back in there, everything she'd built, every carefully constructed wall between who she'd been and who she was pretending to be, would come crashing down. Stay invisible. Stay quiet. Stay safe. The monitor flatlined. Lily turned around and ran. She was back in Bay 3 before anyone could stop her. Marcus was halfway through chest compressions, his forehead slick with sweat, his jaw set in a hard line. He didn't even look up when she appeared at the opposite side of the gurney. Monroe, I swear to God. He's bleeding into his abdomen, Lily interrupted. Every compression you do is just pumping more blood into his peritoneal cavity. You need to stop and let me clamp the hepatic. You are off this case. Lily reached across the patient and grabbed a scalpel from the instrument tray. The room went dead silent again. Marcus's eyes went wide. What the hell do you think you're doing? Saving his life. Then she cut. The incision was fast, clean, and placed exactly where it needed to be, 3 inches below the sternum, angled to access the upper abdomen without hitting the diaphragm. Blood welled up immediately, dark and thick. Lily's hands moved on autopilot, reaching into the cavity with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. She's doing a subxiphoid. Someone stop her! But Marcus didn't move. He stood there, frozen, watching as Lily's fingers found the torn artery and applied pressure with a gauze pack. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. She grabbed a clamp from the tray without looking, muscle memory guiding her hand, and secured the vessel with 2 smooth clicks. "Pack the cavity and get him upstairs," she said quietly. "He needs a proper vascular repair, but this'll hold him long enough." The monitor beeped. Once, twice. The flat line transformed into a rhythm. Weak, but steady. The patient gasped, his chest heaving, his eyes flying open. For a single surreal moment, he stared directly at Lily with an expression that was far too aware for someone who'd just been clinically dead. His lips moved. "Nightingale," he whispered. Then his eyes rolled back and he was unconscious again, but breathing, alive, stable. The trauma bay erupted into controlled chaos as the team prepped him for transport. Lily stepped back from the table, her hands covered in blood, her entire body shaking with adrenaline she hadn't felt in 3 years. She'd done it. She'd saved him, and she'd just destroyed everything. Marcus was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. His face had gone from angry to something else entirely, something between shock and a very specific kind of horror that came from realizing you'd been completely, catastrophically wrong. "Who the hell are you?" he asked quietly. Before Lily could answer, the ER doors exploded inward again, but this time it wasn't paramedics. It was 6 men in dark suits with federal badges, followed by 4 soldiers in full combat fatigues carrying rifles that definitely weren't standard hospital equipment. They moved through the ER like they owned it, clearing rooms, posting up at exits, transforming Mercy Ridge Medical Center into something that looked a lot more like a military checkpoint than a place where people came to heal. The lead agent, a woman with steel gray hair and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite, walked directly to Bay 3. Her eyes swept the room, cataloged the blood, the organized chaos, the patient being prepped for surgery. Then her eyes landed on Lily, and she smiled. "Lieutenant Vaughn," the woman said. "It's been a while." Lily's blood turned to ice water. The room spun. Every nurse, every doctor, every resident in that trauma bay turned to stare at her with identical expressions of confusion and dawning horror. "I don't know what you're talking about," Lily said automatically. The agent pulled out a tablet and turned it around. On the screen was a military personnel file with a photo that was 3 years younger, but unmistakably her. The name beneath it read, Lieutenant Emily Vaughn, Special Operations Combat Medic, Classified. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," the agent replied, "and you know why we're here." Marcus looked between Lily and the agent, his face draining of color. "What is this? Who is this woman?" The agent's smile widened. "This woman is the reason half a special operations team made it home from Syria alive. She's the medic who performed a field transfusion using car battery cables and coffee filters. She's got 2 Bronze Stars, a Purple Heart, and a classified commendation from the Joint Chiefs for an operation that officially never happened." She paused. "She's also been living under a false identity for 3 years because she walked away from the service with enough PTSD to flatten a normal person. That's not," Lily started. "The patient you just saved," the agent continued. "That's Captain Ryan Torres, Delta Force. He was shot 4 times tonight while trying to escape from the men who've been hunting him for the last 72 hours. Men who are connected to a defense contractor called Apex Strategic Solutions. Men who will come to this hospital to finish the job." The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus's face had gone from white to green. "You're saying there are people coming here to kill that man?" "I'm saying," the agent replied calmly, "that this hospital is about to become a combat zone, and the only person here qualified to handle it is standing in front of you covered in blood." Lily shook her head, backing toward the wall. No, I'm done with that. I can't." Captain Torres was carrying evidence," the agent interrupted. "Evidence that Apex has been selling classified military technology to terrorist organizations. Evidence that implicates senators, generals, and corporate executives in a conspiracy that makes Watergate look like a parking ticket. People have died to protect that secret. More will die before sunrise." "Then get him out of here," Lily shot back. "Take him to a military hospital. Lock him down somewhere safe. He'll be dead before we make it 6 blocks. The only reason he's alive right now is because you saved him. The only reason we have a chance of protecting him is because we're already here." The agent stepped closer, her voice dropping. "I know you wanted out. I know what you went through. But Torres called for you specifically before he passed out. He said if anyone could keep him breathing long enough to expose this, it was Nightingale. The nickname hit Lily like a physical blow. She hadn't heard it in 3 years. Hadn't thought about the soldiers who'd given it to her after she'd spent 36 hours straight keeping wounded men alive during a siege in Fallujah. Hadn't let herself remember the weight of being someone people relied on to stand between them and death. "I'm just a nurse now," she whispered. "No," the agent said quietly. "You're not." The lights flickered. Everyone looked up. The lights flickered again, then died completely. Emergency generators kicked in with a low hum, bathing the ER in dim red emergency lighting. Phones lost signal. Radios went to static. Then, from somewhere in the eastern corridor, came the sound of suppressed gunfire. Pop, 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 pop. Screaming erupted from the waiting room. The soldiers with the federal agents immediately went tactical, weapons up, scanning angles. The lead agent grabbed Lily's arm hard enough to leave bruises. "They're here," she said, "and they're not leaving witnesses." Marcus had gone completely white. "What do we do?" The agent looked at Lily. "That's up to your ghost medic here." Everyone was staring at her. The nurses she'd worked beside for 3 years, the doctors who'd never learned her name, the residents who'd treated her like furniture, all of them waiting for someone, anyone, to tell them what to do. Lily closed her eyes, took a breath, and when she opened them again, the quiet night shift nurse was gone. In her place was something older, harder, something that had been forged in places where hesitation meant dying, and mercy was a luxury nobody could afford. "Lock down all exits except the western ambulance bay," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Get every patient who can move to the central nursing station. It's the most defensible position on this floor. Pull the crash carts to create choke points in the corridors." She turned to Marcus. "How many people are in the building?" He stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. I don't... How many people?" 80, maybe 90, including staff. "Get on the intercom. Tell everyone to shelter in place and stay away from windows. Now." Marcus nodded mutely and ran. The agent was grinning like a wolf. "There's the Nightingale, I remember." "How many hostiles?" Lily asked. "Unknown. At least 6, probably more." "Rules of engagement?" "They're contractors, professional killers. They'll execute anyone who sees their faces." The agent pulled a handgun from her belt and offered it to Lily. "Still know how to use one of these?" Lily took the weapon automatically, checked the chamber, confirmed the magazine. The weight was familiar in her hand, comfortable in a way that should have terrified her but instead felt like coming home. More gunfire echoed through the corridor, closer now. The soldiers were taking defensive positions. The nurses were herding patients toward the central station. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, Lily Monroe, the woman who'd spent 3 years trying to disappear, made a choice. She looked at the agent. "Torres needs to get to surgery or he dies anyway. How long until backup arrives?" 30 minutes? Maybe 40. "Then we hold for 30 minutes. The agent's grin widened. "That's what I like to hear." A massive explosion rocked the eastern wing. The building shook. Dust rained from the ceiling tiles. And through the emergency lighting, Lily could see shadows moving in the smoke, armed figures clearing rooms with military precision. She turned to the federal soldiers. "2 of you stay with Torres. The rest of you set up a perimeter around the central station. Anyone comes through that corridor who isn't staff, you drop them." "Who put you in charge?" one of the soldiers asked. The lead agent smiled. "I did. Lieutenant Vaughn has more combat experience than all of you combined. She's seen more action than your entire unit, and right now she's the only thing standing between you and a bloodbath." The soldier nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am." Lily grabbed a radio from one of the fallen security guards. "All staff, this is Monroe in emergency. We are under attack by armed hostiles. Stay in locked rooms. Do not open doors for anyone unless you can verify their identity. If you hear gunfire, get on the floor and stay down." She paused. "This is not a drill." The radio crackled with panicked voices. Then Marcus's voice came over the hospital intercom, shaky but functional. "Code Silver, active shooter situation. All personnel shelter in place. Repeat, Code Silver." Lily moved toward the corridor where the gunfire had originated. The agent grabbed her shoulder. "Where do you think you're going?" "To slow them down." "You're going to get yourself killed." Lily checked the gun again, looked the agent dead in the eye. Not before I save that man upstairs." Then she disappeared into the smoke and darkness like she'd never been a civilian at all. The eastern corridor was a war zone. Bodies, security guards, 2 nurses, a janitor, lay sprawled in pools of blood. Bullet holes stitched the walls. The smell of cordite and copper hung thick in the air. Lily moved through it with practiced calm, weapon up, scanning corners, listening for movement. She found the first hostile in a supply closet. He was reloading, his back to the door. Lily put 2 rounds in his center mass before he even knew she was there. He dropped. She took his rifle, his spare magazines, and his radio. The radio crackled. "Sector 2 clear. No sign of the target." "Copy. Moving to ICU." Lily's blood went cold. Torres was being moved to surgery on the 4th floor. If the hostiles made it to the surgical wing, they'd massacre everyone up there. She ran. The stairwell was dark and silent. Lily took the steps 3 at a time, her breath steady, her mind clear. This was what she'd trained for. What she'd been good at. The chaos didn't frighten her, it focused her. She emerged on the 4th floor just as 3 armed men rounded the corner toward the surgical suite. They saw her the same moment she saw them. Everyone moved at once. Lily dove behind a gurney as bullets tore through the air where her head had been. She came up firing, dropping the first man with a shot to the leg and the second with a double tap to the chest. The third got off 3 more rounds before she put him down with a headshot that painted the wall behind him red. Silence. Lily stayed low, breathing hard, waiting for more. When none came, she moved forward and grabbed another radio. "We have a problem," a voice said through the static. "Someone's engaging our guys, professional, knows what she's doing. Find her and end her." "Copy." Lily switched the radio to the hospital frequency. "Torres, if you can hear me, this is Nightingale. You've got hostiles on every floor. Stay where you are. Help is coming." She didn't wait for a response. She moved toward the surgical wing, where Marcus was working on Torres with shaking hands and a resident who looked like he was about to vomit. "Jesus Christ," Marcus breathed when he saw her. Are they dead or dying?" Lily said flatly. "How's the patient?" "Stable. Barely. I'm trying to repair the hepatic artery, but if those people come through that door, they won't." Lily positioned herself at the entrance to the surgical suite, rifle ready. "You just focus on keeping him alive." "Who are you really?" Marcus asked quietly. Lily didn't take her eyes off the corridor. "Does it matter?" "You just killed 3 men. They would have killed 50. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." The radio crackled again. "All teams, the primary target is in surgery. 4th floor, western wing. Converge and eliminate everyone in the room. No witnesses." Marcus's hands froze. "They're coming here." "I know. We should run. Can't move the patient. He dies if we try." "Then what do we do?" Lily chambered around. "We hold." Footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Multiple sets. Moving fast. She counted at least 6 men by the sound of their boots. 6 trained killers against 1 woman with a stolen rifle and a decade-old promise to protect the wounded no matter what. Not great odds. But she'd faced worse. The first man through the door never saw her. She shot him in the throat, and he went down choking. The second made it 2 steps before she dropped him with a shot to the knee and a follow-up to the skull. The third and fourth came together, laying down suppressive fire that tore through the medical equipment and shattered the observation windows. Lily rolled behind a cabinet, popped up, fired twice. 1 down. Then she was moving again, using the surgical suite like a maze, always 1 step ahead, always finding angles they couldn't cover. The 5th man tried to flank her through the recovery room. She heard him coming and put a bullet through the wall that caught him square in the chest. The 6th man was smarter. He waited, let Lily's magazine run dry. Then he stepped out of cover with a smile on his face and his weapon trained on her center mass. "Game over, Lieutenant," he said. Lily didn't move, didn't blink. Not even close. Behind him, Marcus Webb, trauma surgeon, arrogant bastard, the man who'd tried to have her fired, stood holding a confiscated handgun in shaking hands. He fired once. The hostile dropped. The surgical suite went silent except for the steady beep of Torres's heart monitor and the sound of Marcus's ragged breathing. He stood there, gun still raised, eyes wide with shock at what he'd just done. "Thank you," Lily said quietly. Marcus lowered the weapon. Don't thank me. I don't." He looked at the bodies on the floor. What the hell is happening? War, Lily said simply. Just a different kind. Federal backup arrived 6 minutes later, flooding the hospital with agents and military police. The surviving hostiles were rounded up, arrested, or killed trying to escape. Torres survived surgery and was immediately moved to a secure military facility. And Lily sat on the floor of the surgical suite, covered in blood and cordite and the weight of 3 years' worth of pretending to be someone she wasn't, while the hospital administration tried to figure out how to explain any of this to the press. The lead agent found her there an hour later. "You did good, Lieutenant." "I'm not a lieutenant anymore." "Could have fooled me." The woman sat down beside her. "Torres is awake. He's asking for you." "What does he want?" "To say thank you. To tell you that the evidence is secure. To let you know that every person who ordered his death is going to pay for it." She paused. "And to tell you that you can stop running now." Lily closed her eyes. "I don't know how to do that." "Then figure it out. Because people like you, people who stand up when everyone else is running, we need more of them, not less." When Lily finally stood up and walked back into the ER, the entire staff was waiting. The nurses she'd worked beside, the doctors who'd barely known her name, the residents who'd watched her save Torres and then turn the hospital into a fortress. And Marcus Webb, standing at the front with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Monroe," he said, "or Vaughn, or whoever you are." "Lily," she replied quietly. "Just Lily." He nodded slowly. "Lily, I owe you an apology, a lot of apologies." He took a breath. "You were right about the diagnosis, about everything, and I was too arrogant to listen." "We all survived," Lily said. "That's what matters." "No." Marcus shook his head. "What matters is that I tried to have you fired for being better at your job than I wanted to admit. What matters is that you saved everyone in this building despite that. And what matters," he paused, "what matters is that I'm going to spend however long it takes to make sure you never have to hide who you are again." Lily stared at him, speechless. The charge nurse stepped forward. "We all are." Then another nurse nodded, then a resident, then another. One by one, every person in that ER made the same silent promise, that whatever happened next, they had her back. For the first time in 3 years, Lily felt something crack open in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus gave her a tired smile. "Don't thank me yet. The board's going to have questions. So will the press. So will probably half the federal government." He paused. "But we'll deal with it together." Outside, dawn was breaking over Phoenix. The police had cordoned off the hospital. News crews were setting up cameras. And somewhere in a secure bunker, Captain Ryan Torres was giving testimony that would bring down one of the largest defense contractors in the world. But inside Mercy Ridge Medical Center, in the emergency department where blood still stained the floors and bullet holes marked the walls, a woman who'd spent 3 years trying to disappear finally allowed herself to be seen. The trauma alert went off again. A car accident, incoming critical. And Marcus glanced at Lily with raised eyebrows. "Feel like taking lead on this one?" he asked. Lily grabbed her stethoscope. "Always." The car accident victim was a 17-year-old kid who'd wrapped his father's pickup truck around a telephone pole doing 70 in a residential zone. His name was Jamie, and he was bleeding from somewhere the first responders couldn't identify. Lily had him stabilized and intubated in under 4 minutes, while Marcus assisted with the kind of focused silence that came from working alongside someone who actually knew what they were doing. "Pneumothorax on the left side," Lily said, her hands already moving to prep the chest tube insertion. "Get me a 14-gauge needle." Marcus handed it to her without hesitation. No argument, no posturing, just efficiency. The tube went in clean. Air hissed out. Jamie's oxygen saturation climbed from 82 to 94 in under 30 seconds. "He's gonna make it," Marcus said quietly. "Yeah." Lily stripped off her gloves and tossed them in the bin. "He is." They stood there for a moment in the relative calm, both of them covered in blood that wasn't their own, both of them exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. The ER had been cleaned as much as possible in the hour since the shooting, but you could still see the bullet scars in the walls, Still smell the cordite under the industrial disinfectant. You should go home, Marcus said. Get some sleep, shower. Pretend to be a normal person for a few hours. Lily almost laughed. What's normal after tonight? I have no idea. He rubbed his face with both hands. But I know you've been on shift for 16 hours straight, half of which you spent fighting off a hit squad. So maybe start with sleep and we'll work backwards from there. She wanted to argue, wanted to say she was fine, that she could keep going, that stopping meant thinking and thinking meant remembering and remembering meant go, Marcus said, gentler this time. That's an order from your attending. I'll handle the board meeting at 9. What board meeting? His expression went carefully neutral. The one where they're going to ask why a nurse performed unauthorized surgery, discharged a firearm on hospital property, and killed 6 men in what's technically a civilian medical facility. The exhaustion hit her all at once. Right, that meeting. Don't worry about it. I'm going to tell them exactly what happened. You saved lives. All of them, including mine. He paused. Now get out of here before I have security escort you. Lily left through the back entrance where the news cameras couldn't see her. The morning sun was brutal after the dim emergency lighting, and Phoenix was already heating up despite the early hour. She made it to her car, a beat-up Honda Civic that was old enough to vote, before her hands started shaking. She sat in the driver's seat with the door open and the engine off, staring at her palms. There was still blood under her fingernails. She'd killed 6 people tonight, maybe 7, depending on whether the one she'd shot in the stairwell had survived. She'd promised herself 3 years ago that she was done with killing, and tonight she'd broken that promise without hesitation. The worst part? It had felt easy, natural, like slipping into an old jacket that still fit perfectly despite the years in storage. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then she thought about Torres and the federal agents and the very real possibility that someone at Apex Strategic Solutions had her name now, and she picked up. Monroe. Lieutenant Vaughn. The voice was male, calm, and had the particular inflection that marked him as military even through the phone line. This is Colonel James Brennan, Defense Intelligence Agency. I need you to come to Walter Reed Medical Center in Bethesda within the next 12 hours. I'm in Phoenix. I'm aware. There's a transport waiting for you at Luke Air Force Base. Captain Torres is being debriefed and he's requesting your presence. I'm not military anymore, Lily said flatly. I don't take orders from colonels. This isn't an order, it's a request. Torres says you're the only person he trusts to verify the medical records in the evidence packet. Apparently, Apex has been falsifying combat casualty reports to cover up weapons malfunctions that killed American soldiers. Brennan paused. He needs someone who knows field medicine well enough to spot the inconsistencies. Lily closed her eyes. How many soldiers died? 43 that we know of. Jesus Christ. Exactly. So will you come? She should say no. Should hang up, drive home, take Marcus's advice, and pretend to be normal for a few hours. Should let someone else handle this because she'd already paid her dues and then some. I'll be there, she heard herself say. Good. The transport leaves at 1400 hours. Don't be late. The line went dead. Lily sat there for another 10 minutes before she finally started the car and drove home to pack a bag she hadn't touched in 3 years. The one with her old uniforms and the medals she'd never worn, and the discharge papers that were technically honorable but felt anything but. The hearing with the hospital board happened without her. Marcus called at 8:30 that night while she was somewhere over Nevada in a military transport that smelled like jet fuel and old coffee. You're cleared, he said without preamble. Full reinstatement, back pay for the disciplinary suspension they were planning, and a formal apology from the CEO. What did you tell them? The truth. That you identified a misdiagnosis I missed, performed a life-saving procedure under duress, and then single-handedly defended the hospital against armed hostiles while I hid in an OR, trying not to vomit. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. I also told them that if they fired you, I'd resign and make sure every news outlet in the country knew they punished a decorated veteran for saving lives. Lily blinked. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did. You saved my life, Monroe. The least I can do is save your job. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. Just come back when you're done with whatever classified bullshit the feds have you doing. He paused. And Lily? Be careful. People who threaten billion-dollar corporations tend to have accidents. I'll keep that in mind. She hung up and stared out the window at the darkness below. Somewhere down there, America was going about its normal business. Families eating dinner, kids doing homework, people living lives that didn't involve bullets and blood and the weight of secrets that could topple governments. She wondered what that felt like. Walter Reed Medical Center was exactly as sterile and bureaucratic as she remembered. Colonel Brennan met her at the entrance. Tall, black, early 50s, with the kind of thousand-yard stare that marked him as someone who'd seen his share of combat. He shook her hand with a grip that was firm but not aggressive. "Lieutenant Vaughn." "Just Lily. I'm not active duty." Force of habit. He gestured toward the building. "Torres is on the third floor. He's stable, lucid, and extremely grateful you're here." "What's his prognosis?" "Full recovery thanks to your field work. The surgeons here said another 3 minutes, and he would have bled out completely." Brennan led her through security checkpoints and sterile corridors. He's been talking nonstop since he woke up. Names, dates, wire transfers, weapons shipments. We've got enough to arrest half the board of Apex Strategic Solutions. Then why do you need me? Because the medical records are the smoking gun. Apex claimed those soldiers died from enemy fire or equipment operator error. Torres says the real cause was faulty ammunition that exploded in the chamber instead of firing properly. If you can prove the autopsy reports were falsified, we can add negligent homicide to the charges. Lily stopped walking. "You want me to look at autopsy photos of dead soldiers? I want you to help us make sure those soldiers didn't die for nothing." She wanted to say no. Wanted to explain that she'd spent 3 years in therapy trying to forget the faces of the men she couldn't save, that looking at more dead bodies would probably undo every coping mechanism she'd built, that she was barely holding it together as it was. But 43 soldiers had died, and someone needed to speak for them. "Show me the files," she said. Torres looked like hell, but sounded sharp. He was propped up in bed with more monitoring equipment than Lily had seen outside an intensive care unit, his chest wrapped in bandages, his face pale but alert. When she walked in, his eyes lit up with recognition. "Nightingale, you actually came." "Don't make me regret it." Lily pulled up a chair. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot 4 times and then had a nurse perform unauthorized surgery on me." He grinned weakly. "But alive. Which is more than I expected 12 hours ago." "You're welcome." "I mean it. Thank you." His expression went serious. "I know coming here wasn't easy. I know you walked away from all this for a reason." "Yeah, well, turns out I'm bad at staying walked away." Colonel Brennan entered with a laptop and a thick folder of documents. "Lieutenant, Lily, these are the medical files Apex submitted to the Department of Defense after each incident, cross-referenced with the actual field reports from the soldiers' commanding officers." Lily opened the first file and immediately saw the problem. The autopsy listed cause of death as catastrophic head trauma, consistent with high-velocity rifle fire. But the field report from the lieutenant who'd been there described the soldier, a 22-year-old kid from Nebraska named Davis, clutching his face and screaming about his rifle exploding. She pulled up the autopsy photos. The damage pattern was all wrong. "This wasn't a rifle round," she said quietly. "This was internal fragmentation. The skull fractures radiate outward from the maxillofacial region, not inward from an entry wound. And look at the soft tissue damage. It's thermal. This kid's rifle chamber exploded and drove shrapnel into his face at point-blank range." Brennan leaned forward. "You're certain?" "I've seen this exact injury profile before. Training accident in North Carolina, 2019. Faulty ammunition batch caused 3 rifles to explode during a live fire exercise." She looked at Torres. "How many of these cases follow the same pattern?" 31 out of 43. Lily went through the files one by one. Each time, the story was the same. Official cause of death listed as enemy fire or equipment malfunction. Actual cause was catastrophic ammunition failure. Soldiers who should have been making it home in one piece were instead dying because someone at Apex had cut corners on quality control and then paid coroners to hide the evidence. By the time she finished, her hands were shaking again, and there were tears on her cheeks she didn't remember crying. "These kids trusted their equipment," she said hoarsely. "They trusted that someone made sure it worked. And instead they died so Apex could save money on testing and quality assurance," Brennan finished. We estimate the company saved approximately $12 million by using substandard propellant in their ammunition. They made $300 million in profit from that contract. Torres struggled to sit up straighter. That's why they tried to kill me. I found the paper trail. Emails from executives explicitly ordering engineers to bypass safety protocols. Internal memos discussing how to falsify test results. Wire transfers to medical examiners in 3 different states. He looked at Lily. Your testimony as an expert witness will make the case airtight. I'm not testifying. Both men stared at her. I came here to verify the medical records, Lily said. I did that. I'm not standing up in federal court and reliving the worst experiences of my life so a bunch of lawyers can tear me apart on cross-examination. These families deserve justice, Brennan said carefully. Then get them justice, but don't ask me to be the one who delivers it. Lily stood up. I'm going back to Phoenix. I've got a job that doesn't involve autopsies and conspiracies and people trying to kill me. She made it halfway to the door before Torres spoke. Sergeant Anderson was 24 years old, he said quietly. He had a wife and a 3-month-old daughter he'd never met. His rifle exploded during a patrol in Kabul. Shrapnel severed his carotid artery. He bled out in 6 minutes while his team tried to stop the bleeding with their bare hands. Lily stopped walking. Staff Sergeant Mitchell was 31. 2 kids. His weapon detonated during a firefight. He took fragmentation to the abdomen and died screaming for his mother. Torres's voice was steady, but his eyes were hard. Corporal Hayes, Private Rodriguez, Specialist Kim, all dead because someone decided profit was more important than lives. And all of them are counting on people like us to make sure their deaths mean something. That's not fair, Lily whispered. No, it's not. But it's true. She stood there for a long moment, caught between the door and the bed, between running away and standing still, between the person she'd tried to become and the person she'd always been. If I do this, she said finally, I'm not doing it alone. I want protection for my family. I want witness security if things go sideways. And I want a written guarantee that when this is over, I get to walk away and nobody bothers me again. Brennan nodded. Done. And one more thing. She turned to face them. Apex sent a hit team to kill Torres. If they're smart, they'll come after me next. So you better make damn sure they don't succeed. We've got a protective detail assigned to you starting tonight, Brennan said. 2 agents, rotating shifts. They'll shadow you back in Phoenix until we have everyone in custody. How long will that take? 48 hours, maybe less. We're executing arrest warrants tomorrow morning. He pulled out his phone and showed her a list of names. 15 executives, 6 medical examiners, 3 DOD procurement officers. Everyone who touched this. Lily scanned the list and froze. The 4th name down was Richard Calloway, CEO of Apex Strategic Solutions. The man who'd built a defense empire worth $18 billion by selling equipment to the military and technology to foreign governments. Calloway's connected, she said. Senators, generals, half the defense industry. You arrest him, there's going to be blowback. Let them blow back. We've got evidence linking him directly to the falsified reports. Brennan's expression was grim. He approved every one of these deaths personally, signed off on the cover-ups, even helped write the fake autopsy reports in some cases. Jesus. Yeah. Torres shifted in the bed, wincing. Which is why they tried so hard to kill me. I wasn't just carrying evidence, I was carrying proof that goes all the way to the top. A nurse entered to check Torres's vitals, giving Lily an excuse to step into the hallway. She leaned against the wall and tried to process everything. 43 dead soldiers, billions of dollars, a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government and corporate power, and somehow she was right in the middle of it. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. Hey, she answered. Hey yourself. You survived the classified meeting? Barely. How's Phoenix? Chaotic. The news crews are camped outside the hospital demanding interviews. The board wants you to do a press conference when you get back. And there's a reporter from the Washington Post asking very pointed questions about Apex Strategic Solutions. He paused. What the hell did you get yourself into? Long story. I'll explain when I'm back. When is that? 2 days, maybe 3. Need me to feed your cat or water your plants or anything? Lily almost laughed. I don't have a cat or plants. Right. Forgot you're aggressively low maintenance. His voice softened. Seriously, though, are you okay? I don't know yet. Ask me again when this is over. Fair enough. Be safe, Monroe. You too, Webb. She hung up and found Brennan waiting for her with a tablet. The prosecutor wants to prep you for testimony. He's got questions about the autopsy findings and your military background. Now? Now's better than later. We're moving fast on this before Apex can destroy more evidence. The prep session took 4 hours and left Lily feeling like she'd been through a psychological meat grinder. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Fisher, who looked like she ate defense attorneys for breakfast, hammered her with questions about her qualifications, her experience, her relationship with Torres, and every detail of the medical analysis she'd performed. By the time Fisher was satisfied, it was past midnight and Lily could barely keep her eyes open. You did good, Fisher said as they wrapped up. Your testimony is going to demolish their defense. Get some rest. Arraignments start at 0900 tomorrow. Lily stumbled back to the temporary quarters Brennan had arranged, a hotel room near the hospital with 2 federal agents posted outside the door. She fell into bed still wearing her clothes and was asleep before her head hit the pillow. The nightmares came fast and vivid. Davis from Nebraska with his face blown apart. Anderson bleeding out while his team screamed for a medic. Mitchell dying in the dirt. Hayes, Rodriguez, Kim, all of them looking at her with dead eyes and asking why she hadn't saved them. She woke up at 4 in the morning, drenched in sweat and shaking. The arrests happened at dawn. Lily watched the news coverage on her phone while federal agents raided Apex headquarters in Virginia, private homes in Maryland and Connecticut, medical examiner offices in 3 states. Richard Calloway was taken into custody while boarding his private jet to Switzerland. His CFO was arrested at a golf resort in Florida. The head of ammunition production tried to run and was tackled by agents in his own driveway. By 8 a.m., every major news network was running the story. Defense contractor executives arrested in massive conspiracy. 43 soldiers killed by faulty ammunition. Billions of dollars in fraudulent contracts. Falsified autopsy reports. And at the center of it all, Captain Ryan Torres, the whistleblower who'd risked everything to expose the truth. Nobody mentioned Lily, which was exactly how she wanted it. The arraignments were brutal. Lily sat in the federal courthouse and watched as 15 defendants were paraded in front of a judge and charged with everything from fraud to negligent homicide to conspiracy to commit murder. Calloway's lawyer, a man in a suit that probably cost more than Lily made in 6 months, argued for bail and was denied. The defendant poses an extreme flight risk, the judge said flatly, and given the severity of the charges, including the attempted murder of a federal witness, bail is denied. Remand to custody. Calloway's face went white. For the first time, he looked genuinely afraid. Good, Lily thought. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed like locusts. Lily tried to slip past them, but someone recognized her from the hospital shooting in Phoenix. Miss Monroe. Is it true you saved Captain Torres's life? Did you know about the Apex conspiracy? Are you testifying at trial? The federal agents flanking her pushed through the crowd without answering. They got her into an SUV with tinted windows and drove away while cameras flashed and questions flew. That's going to follow you, one of the agents said. Her name was Santos, mid-30s, former Army MP, with a scar across her left eyebrow that spoke of stories she probably wouldn't share. I know. You ready for that? The attention? No, but I'm ready for Apex to burn. Santos smiled grimly. Then you're going to love what happens next. What happened next was a media firestorm that made the arraignments look like a quiet afternoon. Within 24 hours, families of the dead soldiers were filing wrongful death lawsuits. Congress announced an investigation into DoD procurement practices. The Secretary of Defense gave a press conference promising accountability. 3 more Apex executives were arrested trying to flee the country. And through it all, Lily's name kept coming up. The nurse who'd saved Torres. The veteran who'd exposed the conspiracy. The whistleblower's whistleblower. She hated every second of it. On the 3rd day, she finally flew back to Phoenix. Marcus met her at the airport looking exhausted and somehow proud at the same time. You're famous, he said by way of greeting. I'm tired. Well, brace yourself. The hospital wants to give you an award. The mayor wants to meet you, and there's a documentary crew that wants to interview you about the shooting. Tell them all no. Already did. He grabbed her bag. Come on, I'm taking you home before someone else tries to make you into a hero. They drove through Phoenix in silence for a while. Then Marcus said, "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing with the testimony. It doesn't feel right. It never does. But those families needed someone to stand up for them. You did that." Lily leaned her head against the window. "I just want to go back to being invisible." "Too late for that. You're stuck being a person now. Deal with it." Despite everything, she smiled. They pulled up to her apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a complex that had seen better days, and Marcus walked her to the door. "Get some sleep, take a few days off, then come back and let's save some more lives together. You're not bad at this whole supportive colleague thing. Don't spread it around. I have a reputation to maintain." She unlocked the door and stepped inside. Stopped. The apartment had been ransacked, furniture overturned, drawers emptied, her laptop smashed on the floor, and on the wall spray-painted in red. "Traitors die." Santos and her partner came through the door with weapons drawn, clearing rooms, checking closets. Lily just stood there, staring at the message. "They were here," she said numbly. "In my home." Santos holstered her weapon. "We need to get you to a safe house, now." "Who did this?" "Probably friends of Calloway, or contractors he hired before we picked him up." Santos was already on her phone calling for backup. "Doesn't matter. What matters is they know where you live." Marcus put a hand on Lily's shoulder. "You're staying with me. No arguments." "You don't have to." "You saved my life. You defended my hospital. You took on a billion-dollar corporation to get justice for dead soldiers." He looked at her evenly. "You think I'm going to let some corporate thugs intimidate you? Not a chance." 3 hours later, Lily was in Marcus's guest room with her few undamaged belongings and 2 federal agents parked in a sedan outside. She lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about the spray-painted threat or the fact that despite everything she'd done, she was still running. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She almost didn't answer. Then she thought about Torres and Brennan and the 43 dead soldiers, and she picked up. Monroe, heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice, distorted, mechanical, impossible to identify. "You think you won. You think arresting a few executives changes anything. You have no idea how deep this goes, how many people are involved, how much money is at stake." Lily sat up. "Who is this?" "Someone who wants you to understand what you've done. Torres exposed one conspiracy, but there are others, bigger ones, and you just made yourself a target for all of them. I'm not afraid of you." The voice laughed, cold and empty. "You should be, because we're not done with you, Lieutenant Vaughn, not even close." The line went dead. Lily sat there with the phone in her hand, adrenaline flooding her system, every instinct screaming that the threat was real and immediate and far from over. Downstairs, she heard glass shatter. Lily was already moving before the sound finished echoing through the house. She grabbed the handgun Santos had given her from the nightstand and was out the bedroom door in 3 seconds flat. The federal agents were coming through the front entrance with weapons drawn, clearing the foyer while Marcus stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs in his bathrobe looking confused and terrified. "Get down!" Lily hissed. He dropped. Santos swept the living room while her partner, a broad-shouldered man named Keller, checked the kitchen. The shattered glass came from the back patio door. Someone had thrown a brick wrapped in paper through the sliding glass. Keller retrieved it carefully, unfolded the paper with gloved hands. His expression went dark. "What does it say?" Marcus asked from the floor. Santos showed it to Lily first. The message was short, typed in block letters. "We know where you sleep. We know where you work. Stop talking or start dying." "That's it," Santos said flatly. "You're going to a federal safe house tonight. No discussion." "They'll just find me again," Lily replied. She was calmer than she should have been, and that scared her more than the threat. The old combat mindset was sliding back into place like a key in a lock. Assess, adapt, act. Whoever's doing this has resources, money, access to information they shouldn't have. Which is why we need to move you somewhere they can't reach. Nowhere's safe if they're this connected. Lily looked at the brick, then at Marcus. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought this to your door." "Shut up," Marcus said, getting to his feet. "You didn't bring anything. They followed you here. Big difference." He turned to Santos. "What do we do?" We secure the perimeter, sweep for additional threats, and transport Miss Monroe to... The power cut out. Every light in the house died simultaneously. The refrigerator stopped humming. The air conditioning went silent. And in the sudden darkness, Lily heard something that made her blood freeze, the sound of multiple car doors closing in the street outside. "Contact front," Keller said quietly. He was at the window, peering through the blinds. 4 vehicles, 8 hostiles, maybe more. Military-grade weapons. They're setting up a perimeter. Santos grabbed her radio. "This is Agent Santos requesting immediate backup at static, dead air." "They're jamming us," she said, her voice tight. "We're cut off." Marcus's face had gone pale. "What do they want?" "Me," Lily said simply. "They want me to stop talking about Apex. Permanently." "Then we give them what they want," Santos said. She grabbed Lily's arm. "Keller and I will hold them off. You and Dr. Webb go out the back, get to the neighbors, call 911. You can't hold off 8 trained killers with 2 handguns. We don't have a choice." Lily looked at the agents, then at Marcus, then at the darkness pressing in from all sides. Every tactical instinct she'd ever learned was screaming that staying in the house was suicide. They were trapped, outnumbered, and outgunned in a residential neighborhood where any firefight would get civilians killed. But running meant leaving Santos and Keller to die buying time she might not even use. "There's another option," she said slowly. Santos looked at her. "What option?" "We don't wait for them to come in. We go out." "That's insane." "It's tactical. They're expecting us to barricade and defend. We do the opposite, hit them while they're setting up, before they're ready." Lily moved to the kitchen and started pulling drawers open. "You said they've got military weapons. Where'd they park?" Keller checked again. 2 vehicles on the street, 2 in the alley behind the house. "They're boxing us in." "Good. That means they're split up." She found what she was looking for, a bottle of grain alcohol Marcus apparently kept for making homemade limoncello. "How many rounds do you have?" 2 magazines each, Santos said. 60 rounds total. Then we make every shot count. Lily grabbed dish towels and started tearing them into strips. "Marcus, do you have any glass bottles?" "Under the sink. What are you doing?" Making a distraction. She assembled 3 crude Molotov cocktails with practiced efficiency, the muscle memory coming back like she'd done it yesterday instead of 5 years ago in a bombed-out village in Syria. "Here's the plan. Keller goes out the front, tosses these at the street vehicles, creates noise and fire, pulls their attention. Santos covers him from the doorway. Soon as they're engaged, Marcus and I go out the back and flank the alley team." "You're going to get us all killed," Santos said. "We're already dead if we stay here." Lily checked her weapon. 15 rounds, 1 in the chamber. "They're not police. They're not going to arrest us. They're going to burn this house down with us inside and make it look like an accident." Marcus swallowed hard. "How do you know that?" "Because it's what I do." The words hung in the darkness. Then Keller nodded slowly. "She's right. We're on borrowed time here." Santos looked between them, jaw tight. Then she pulled out her backup weapon, a compact 9mm, and handed it to Marcus. "You know how to use this?" "Point and shoot?" "Close enough. Don't shoot unless you have to. And if you have to, aim for center mass." "This is insane," Marcus repeated, but he took the gun. "Yeah," Lily agreed, "but it might work." They moved into position, Keller at the front door with the Molotov cocktails and a lighter. Santos beside him, weapon ready. Lily and Marcus at the back door, pressed against the wall, waiting for the signal. "On 3, Keller whispered. 1, 2. The front window exploded inward in a spray of glass and flames. Someone had thrown their own incendiary device, and suddenly the living room was on fire and filling with smoke. "They're breaching," Santos shouted. Keller didn't wait for 3. He kicked open the front door and hurled the first Molotov at the nearest vehicle. It shattered against the hood and erupted into flames that turned night into day. Gunfire erupted immediately, suppressed rifles spitting rounds that tore through the door frame where Keller had been standing a second earlier. Lily grabbed Marcus and hauled him out the back door while the attention was forward. The alley was dark except for the glow from the house fire starting to spread. 2 men were positioned behind a black SUV, their weapons trained on the back exit. They saw Lily and Marcus the same moment the back door opened. Everyone moved at once. Lily shoved Marcus sideways into the cover of a concrete planter and came up firing. Her first shot hit the closer man in the shoulder, spinning him. Her second caught him in the throat, and he went down choking. The other man got off 3 rounds that blew chunks out of the planter before Lily put 2 in his chest. Marcus was hyperventilating. Oh, Christ! Oh, Christ! Stay down, Lily ordered. She moved to the SUV, checked both bodies, dead or dying, and grabbed one of their rifles. AR-15 platform, 30-round magazine, holographic sight, professional grade. From the front of the house, the firefight was escalating. She heard Santos yelling something, heard Keller returning fire, heard more windows breaking as the assault team pushed inside. "We need to help them," Marcus said. "We can't. Not from here." Lily scanned the alley, looking for options. The neighbors' houses were dark, either evacuated or hiding. No police sirens yet, which meant the jamming was still active or dispatch hadn't processed the calls. "We need to get to higher ground, get a better angle." "Higher ground where?" She pointed at the 2-story house across the alley. "There. We go up, we can cover the front street and take pressure off Santos." "That's someone's home." "Then let's hope they're not in it." They ran. Marcus was clumsy and slow, but Lily pulled him along with the grip of someone who dragged wounded soldiers through worse. The back door to the neighbor's house was locked. She kicked it open, one clean strike below the handle that splintered the frame, and they were inside. The house was empty. Smart neighbors had heard gunfire and run. Lily took the stairs 3 at a time, Marcus struggling behind her. The upstairs window overlooked Marcus's street perfectly. She could see the burning vehicles, the assault team advancing on the house, Santos and Keller pinned in the entryway trying to hold them off. "What now?" Marcus panted. Lily raised the rifle, sighted through the holographic, and started shooting. The first hostile went down with a round through the upper back. The second turned toward the new threat and caught 2 bullets in the side. The third dove for cover behind the burning SUV, and Lily waited patiently until he tried to move again before putting him down with a headshot that was pure muscle memory and 0 hesitation. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. You're killing them." "They came here to kill us," Lily said without lowering the rifle. "I'm just faster." The assault team was reorganizing, trying to figure out where the new fire was coming from. Lily switched targets, putting rounds into the vehicles to keep them pinned. One of the hostiles tried to flank around the burning wreckage, and Santos dropped him with a shot from the doorway. 4 down, 4 or 5 still active. Then headlights flooded the street as 3 more SUVs appeared, disgorging another 6 men with tactical gear and automatic weapons. "They brought reinforcements," Marcus said numbly. Lily's jaw tightened. The math was bad and getting worse. Even with the element of surprise, they couldn't hold against 10 hostiles with professional training and unlimited ammunition. Santos and Keller would run dry in the next 60 seconds. She had maybe 40 rounds left. "We need to run," she said. "To where?" Good question. They were surrounded, jammed, and cut off from help. Running would just mean dying tired. Then she heard it. The distant sound of helicopter rotors cutting through the night. Military helicopter. The hostiles heard it too. They looked up, confused, trying to identify the threat. And in that moment of distraction, the helicopter crested the roofline with a spotlight that turned the street into noon and a loudspeaker that boomed across the neighborhood. "This is the United States military. You are surrounded. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately." The assault team scattered. Some ran for their vehicles. Others opened fire on the helicopter, a mistake that got them cut down by door gunners with mounted rifles. The ones who tried to flee on foot were intercepted by soldiers fast roping from the helicopter into the street. The firefight was over in under 30 seconds. Lily lowered her rifle and slumped against the wall, shaking with adrenaline crash. Marcus was sitting on the floor looking like he'd witnessed the end of the world. "Who called the military?" he asked. "Torres," a voice said from the doorway. Lily spun, weapon up, but it was Colonel Brennan standing there in full combat gear with a sidearm on his hip. Behind him, soldiers were securing the street and zip-tying the surviving hostiles. "Torres figured Apex might send contractors after you," Brennan continued. "He called in a favor with his old unit. Got them authorization to conduct a domestic counterterrorism operation." He looked at the carnage below. "Good thing, too. You were about 30 seconds from being overwhelmed." "How did you find us?" "Santos's phone had our backup transmitter that bypassed the jamming. We've been tracking you since you left Walter Reed." He offered her a hand up. Come on, we need to get you somewhere actually secure before they try again. Lily took his hand but didn't move. Who are they, Colonel? This wasn't just Apex. This was coordinated, professional, someone with serious resources and zero concern for collateral damage. We're working on identifying them. Work faster, because whoever sent these people isn't going to stop just because you arrested Richard Calloway. Brennan's expression darkened. I know. The next 6 hours were a blur of debriefings, medical checks, and federal agents asking the same questions in slightly different ways. Lily told them everything: the phone call, the threat, the brick through the window, the assault team that had tried to kill them all. Santos and Keller corroborated her story. Marcus sat in a corner looking shell-shocked and refused to speak unless directly addressed. By the time they were done, it was almost dawn and Lily was running on fumes. We're taking you to a military installation, Brennan said. Fort Huachuca, down near the Mexican border. It's secure, it's remote, and nobody's getting in without clearance. For how long? Until we dismantle whoever's behind this. Could be days. Could be weeks. I have a job, patience, a life. You have a target on your back, Brennan corrected. Right now, staying alive is your job. He wasn't wrong. Lily knew it. But knowing it and accepting it were two different things. What about Marcus? Dr. Webb goes home with protective detail. He's not the target. You are. Marcus looked up at that. I'm not leaving her alone. You don't have a choice. The hell I don't. These people attacked my house, tried to kill me, burned down half my property. I'm involved whether you like it or not. He stood up, steadier now than he'd been all night. So either I go with her, or I go home and wait for the next assault team to show up. Your call, Colonel. Brennan looked between them, jaw working. Then he sighed. Fine. But you follow orders, stay out of the way, and don't make my job harder than it already is. Understood. They left for Fort Huachuca 3 hours later in an armored convoy that looked like something from a war zone. Lily sat in the back of an MRAP with Marcus, both of them exhausted and silent. Outside, Arizona countryside rolled past. Desert scrub and distant mountains, and a sky that was starting to lighten from black to deep blue. Thank you, Lily said quietly. Marcus glanced at her. For what? For not running, for staying, for being stupid enough to get involved in something that could have gotten you killed. Yeah, well, turns out I'm bad at self-preservation. He smiled tiredly. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't do anything crazy while you're in witness protection. Too late for that. They arrived at Fort Huachuca just after 8 a.m. The base was exactly as Brennan had described, remote, secure, and bristling with soldiers who looked like they'd been told to shoot first and ask questions never. Lily and Marcus were taken to a barracks that had been converted into temporary housing, given fresh clothes and food, and told to rest. Lily tried. She lay on the narrow cot and closed her eyes and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. Every time she started to drift, she saw the assault team advancing on Marcus's house, saw Santos and Keller pinned down, saw herself pulling the trigger over and over while bodies dropped and fire spread. She'd killed 3 people tonight, maybe 4, depending on whether the one she'd shot in the shoulder survived. 3 years of trying to be normal, and it had taken one night to turn her back into a killer. Her phone buzzed. She'd been allowed to keep it under strict monitoring protocols, every call recorded, every message screened. The number was Torres. Nightingale. I heard what happened. Are you okay? Define okay. Point taken. Torres sounded better than he had at Walter Reed, stronger, more alert. Brennan's running the shooter identifications. Preliminary results came back an hour ago. And 4 of them were former special operations, Navy SEALs, Delta, Rangers. All discharged under questionable circumstances in the last 3 years. All currently employed by a private military contractor called Talon Security Group. Lily sat up. Talon, that's not Apex. No, but it's connected. Talon provides personal security to Apex executives, among others. They also handle discrete operations for corporate clients who need problems solved quietly. Problems like whistleblowers. Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Talon's CEO is a guy named Marcus Hale, former CIA operations officer. Left the agency in 2018 after an investigation into unauthorized black sites in Eastern Europe. Started Talon 6 months later with funding from venture capital firms linked to defense contractors. Let me guess. One of those contractors is Apex. Three, actually. Apex is the biggest, but Talon also works for Northbridge Defense and Vector Tactical Solutions. All three companies are facing federal investigations now because of the ammunition scandal. Torres paused. You didn't just expose Apex, Lily. You exposed an entire network of contractors who've been falsifying reports, cutting corners, and getting soldiers killed to save money. The implications hit her like cold water. This wasn't about one company trying to silence one whistleblower. This was an entire industry trying to protect billions of dollars in contracts by eliminating anyone who threatened their profits. How deep does this go? She asked. We're still figuring that out, but preliminary evidence suggests at least 12 major defense contractors are involved. Maybe more. Torres's voice dropped. You're not just fighting Apex anymore, Nightingale. You're fighting the military-industrial complex itself. Fantastic. There's more. The medical examiner who falsified the autopsy reports, he was found dead this morning. Apparent suicide. Hung himself in his garage. Lily's blood went cold. That wasn't suicide. Probably not. Which means they're cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might testify against them. He paused. You need to be careful. You're the star witness. If something happens to you, the entire case collapses. I'm on a military base surrounded by armed guards. So was I when they tried to kill me at the hospital. These people have resources you can't imagine and connections that go higher than you think. His voice was grim. Watch your back. Trust no one. And whatever you do, don't let them isolate you. The line went dead before she could respond. Lily sat there holding the phone, Torres's warnings echoing in her head. Don't let them isolate you. But she was already isolated, locked in a barracks on a military base with nowhere to run and no one to trust except a trauma surgeon who'd stumbled into this nightmare by proximity. A knock on the door made her jump. She grabbed her weapon, force of habit, then felt stupid when Marcus poked his head in. Can't sleep either? He asked. Not really. He came in and sat on the other cot. For a while they just sat in silence, two civilians playing soldier in a war they didn't understand. How do you do it? Marcus asked finally. The killing, the violence. How do you just turn it on like that? I don't turn it on. It's always there. I just usually keep it turned down. Lily looked at her hands. They were steady now, no shaking, no tremors. In Afghanistan, we had a saying, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training. When things go bad, you don't think. You just do what you've been trained to do. And you were trained to kill. I was trained to save lives. Killing is just what happens when someone tries to stop me. Marcus absorbed that. For what it's worth, I'm glad you were trained. Otherwise, we'd both be dead right now. Give it time. We're not out of this yet. Over the next 2 days, the investigation exploded. Federal agents raided Talon Security Group headquarters and seized servers containing contracts with a dozen defense contractors. Northbridge and Vector executives were arrested. More medical examiners were found dead. Apparent suicides that nobody believed were actually suicides. And through it all, the death toll kept climbing. 53 soldiers now confirmed killed by faulty ammunition. 11 civilians murdered to cover up the conspiracy. 4 federal witnesses dead under suspicious circumstances. The media called it the biggest military corruption scandal since the Vietnam War. Lily called it a nightmare that wouldn't end. On the third day, Brennan came to the barracks with news that made everything worse. We've identified the funding source behind Talon's operation against you. It's not coming from the defense contractors. Then where? A venture capital firm called Sterling Capital Partners. They're the primary investors in Apex, Northbridge, and Vector, combined portfolio worth about $43 billion. Brennan pulled up files on his tablet. Sterling is run by a man named Jonathan Cross, former Wall Street trader, hedge fund manager, and one of the richest people in America. Forbes puts his net worth around $12 billion. You're saying a billionaire is personally funding assassination attempts? I'm saying Sterling Capital has the most to lose if these defense contractors go under. They're leveraged heavily on those investments. If Apex and the others collapse, Sterling loses everything. Brennan showed her a photo of Cross. Late 50s, silver hair, sharp eyes that looked like they'd calculated your net worth before you finished saying hello. Cross doesn't do his own dirty work. He hires people like Talon to make problems disappear. So arrest him. We're trying, but Cross has lawyers that make Apex's legal team look like traffic court public defenders. He's got senators on speed dial and enough political cover to survive a nuclear strike. Brennan's expression was grim. Right now, all we have is circumstantial evidence linking Sterling to Talon. Not enough for an arrest warrant. Not nearly enough for a conviction. Then what do? We keep you alive long enough to testify at trial. The defense contractors are one thing. We can prosecute them with what we have. But if we want Cross, we need a witness who can connect the dots. Someone who survived his attempts to silence them. He looked at her steadily. That's you. Lily wanted to argue, wanted to say she'd done enough, sacrificed enough, risked enough. But the faces of those 53 dead soldiers kept swimming through her mind, and she knew Torres was right. Walking away now meant their deaths meant nothing. How long until trial? 6 months, maybe 8. You expect me to hide on a military base for 8 months? I expect you to stay alive for 8 months. After that, you can go back to being invisible, if that's what you want. Brennan stood. But right now, you're the most important person in this entire investigation. So yes, you hide, you wait, and you make sure Jonathan Cross doesn't win. That night, Lily couldn't sleep again. She lay in the dark, listening to desert wind rattle the windows, and thought about everything she'd lost, her anonymity, her safety, her carefully constructed civilian life. 3 years of running, and it had all collapsed in less than a week. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then she thought about the threatening calls, the assault team, the bodies piling up, and she picked up because knowing was better than wondering. Monroe. Silence. Then breathing. Then that same mechanically distorted voice from before. You're on a military base, Fort Huachuca, Southern Arizona, Barracks Building 7, 2nd floor, East Wing. The voice paused. Did you think walls would keep you safe? Lily's blood turned to ice. How did you? We have people everywhere, Lieutenant Vaughn. Military, federal, law enforcement. You can't hide from us because we're already inside your protection. Another pause. Jonathan Cross wants you to understand something. This isn't about revenge. It's about business. You're bad for business. So you have a choice. Stop talking, disappear, and maybe we'll let you live. Or keep testifying, and we'll kill everyone you care about until there's nothing left worth protecting. I don't negotiate with terrorists. Then you're a fool. Because we're not terrorists, we're capitalists. And in capitalism, everything has a price. Even you. The voice went cold. 12 hours, Lieutenant. That's how long you have to decide. After that, we start with Dr. Webb. Then we move to your old unit members. Then anyone who ever showed you kindness. We'll make you watch them die one by one until you beg us to kill you too. The line went dead. Lily sat frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, horror spreading through her chest like poison. They knew where she was. They knew about Marcus. They knew enough to find anyone she'd ever cared about and make good on the threat. She grabbed her weapon and ran to Marcus's room. He was asleep, peaceful, unaware. She shook him awake hard enough to startle. What's wrong? We need to leave. Now. Leave where? This is a military base. They're here, Lily interrupted. Or they have people here. I don't know which, but we're not safe. Marcus sat up, suddenly very awake. What happened? She told him about the call, about the threats, about the 12-hour deadline. By the time she finished, his face had gone pale. What do? We run. Run to where? If they can find us on a military installation, they can find us anywhere. Not if we go somewhere they're not looking. Lily grabbed her bag and started shoving clothes into it. Torres gave me an emergency contact number, someone who can help us disappear off the grid until trial. Who? A former CIA operations officer who specializes in protecting whistleblowers. If anyone can hide us from Jonathan Cross, it's her. Marcus grabbed his own bag. This is insane. I know, but it's the only play we have. She checked her weapon one more time, then looked at him seriously. Last chance to walk away, Marcus. You stay here, you're probably safe. They want me, not you. Probably isn't good enough. He zipped his bag closed. Besides, someone needs to keep you from doing anything stupid. Too late for that. They slipped out of the barracks at 0300 hours while the guards were changing shifts. Lily had memorized the patrol patterns, identified the blind spots, calculated the timing down to 15-second windows. Marcus followed her lead, silent and terrified, and trusting her completely. They made it to the vehicle depot and stole a Humvee with keys left in the ignition. Sloppy security or deliberate setup, Lily couldn't tell and didn't care. She drove through the base with headlights off, navigating by memory and moonlight, praying the guards at the gate would be half asleep and uninterested. They weren't. The gate guard stepped out of his booth as they approached, weapon ready, suspicious. "Halt! Identify yourself." Lily rolled down the window. "Lieutenant Vaughn and Dr. Webb, medical emergency off base. Colonel Brennan authorized the transport. I didn't get authorization for any off-base movement." "Then call it in. But we need to leave now or someone dies." The guard hesitated, looked at his radio, looked back at them. And in that moment of indecision, Lily made a choice. She stomped the accelerator, and the Humvee lurched forward, smashing through the wooden gate arm while the guard dove for cover. Alarms blared, spotlights swung toward them, shots fired, warning shots that kicked up dirt beside the vehicle. Then they were out, racing into the desert night with Fort Huachuca disappearing behind them and no clear idea where they were going except away. Marcus was hyperventilating again. "They're going to think we're traitors." Let them think what they want. Right now, staying alive is more important than staying legal. "Where are we going?" "Mexico, across the border, disappear into Nogales, make contact with Torres's asset." Lily kept the accelerator floored, pushing the Humvee to 70 on roads designed for 40. "From there, we figure out how to expose Cross without getting killed." "That's not a plan. That's suicide with extra steps." "You have a better idea?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. "No." They drove for 20 minutes before Lily noticed the headlights behind them. 2 vehicles moving fast, closing the gap. She pushed the Humvee harder, but the engine was already redlining. "Are those military?" Marcus asked. Lily checked the mirrors. The vehicles were black SUVs, not military. "Talon." "How did they find us so fast?" "Because someone told them we were running." She took a hard turn onto a dirt road, kicking up dust. "They were watching the base, waiting for us to make a mistake." The SUVs followed. Gunfire erupted, automatic weapons stitching rounds across the Humvee's armor. Marcus ducked. Lily kept driving, scanning for options, finding none. The dirt road led into open desert with nowhere to hide and no backup coming. They were trapped. The lead SUV pulled alongside them. The passenger window rolled down. A man with a rifle leaned out, aiming directly at Lily. She jerked the wheel hard right, slamming the Humvee into the SUV. Metal screamed. The shooter lost his grip and tumbled out at 60 miles per hour, bouncing across the hardpan like a rag doll. But the impact had damaged the Humvee's steering. It was pulling hard left now, barely controllable. The second SUV rammed them from behind. The Humvee fishtailed, wheels losing traction, momentum carrying them toward a dry ravine that appeared out of the darkness like an open mouth. "Hold on!" Lily screamed. The Humvee went airborne, hung suspended for one impossible second, then crashed into the ravine floor with an impact that felt like being hit by a freight train. Airbags deployed, glass shattered. The world turned sideways. Then silence. Lily came back to consciousness, slowly, tasting blood. The Humvee had rolled twice and come to rest on its side. Marcus was hanging from his seatbelt, unconscious, blood running from a cut on his forehead. "Marcus," she croaked. "Marcus, wake up!" He didn't move. She unbuckled herself and dropped to what was now the floor. Her left arm screamed in pain, dislocated shoulder, maybe broken collarbone. She checked Marcus's pulse with her good hand, strong and steady. He was alive. Voices outside, boots crunching on gravel. "Found them. Vehicles totaled. Any survivors?" "Checking now." Lily grabbed her weapon. 15 rounds left. Not enough. Never enough. But it was what she had, so it would have to do. The driver's door, now the ceiling, was wrenched open. A flashlight beam swept the interior, landing on her face. "Target acquired," the voice said. Lily raised the weapon and fired twice. The flashlight dropped. Someone screamed. Then return fire tore through the Humvee, rounds punching through metal and upholstery and inches from her head. She dragged Marcus toward the passenger side, struggling with one functional arm and his dead weight. They were sitting ducks. In 30 seconds, the shooters would reposition and finish them both. She needed a miracle. What she got was headlights. Multiple vehicles cresting the ravine edge, engines roaring, and a voice over a loudspeaker that was simultaneously the most welcome and terrifying sound she'd ever heard. FBI, drop your weapons and get on the ground. The Talon contractors scattered. Some tried to run. Others opened fire on the FBI vehicles, a mistake that got them cut down by agents with better training and worse tempers. Within seconds, the firefight was over and the desert was full of federal agents swarming the crash site. Someone pulled Lily out of the Humvee. Someone else started working on Marcus. And through the chaos and pain and adrenaline crash, Lily saw a familiar face, Torres, walking toward her on crutches, flanked by FBI agents, looking like he'd discharged himself from the hospital against medical advice. "You called them," she said numbly. "I've been tracking your phone since you left Fort Huachuca," Torres replied. "The second you went dark, I knew something was wrong. Called in the cavalry." He looked at the wrecked Humvee, the dead contractors, the blood. "You're welcome, by the way." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We just killed 6 Talon contractors in U.S. territory. Cross is going to lawyer up harder than ever. And you," he pointed at her, "you just became the most valuable target in the country, because now there's witnesses, evidence, and a paper trail connecting Talon to a coordinated assassination attempt on federal witnesses." "So what do we do?" Torres smiled grimly. "We finish this. We take Jonathan Cross down so hard he never gets back up. And then maybe, you get to go home." "How?" "Simple," a woman's voice said. Lily turned. Standing behind Torres was a woman in her 60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing an FBI windbreaker that somehow looked tailored. She extended her hand. "Assistant Director Helen Morrison, Criminal Division. I run the task force investigating Sterling Capital Partners." She looked at Lily with something between respect and pity. "You want to take down Jonathan Cross? Then you're going to have to do something very dangerous, very illegal, and very likely to get you killed." "What?" Morrison smiled like a shark. "You're going to testify against him before the grand jury, in person, in New York City, where he'll know you're coming and have every opportunity to stop you." She paused. "Think you can survive that, Lieutenant Vaughn?" Lily looked at the bodies, the wreckage, the blood-soaked desert around them, looked at Marcus being loaded into an ambulance, looked at Torres standing there on crutches because he'd been shot trying to expose the same conspiracy, looked at herself in the reflection of Morrison's tactical glasses, and saw someone who'd stopped running a long time ago without realizing it. "When do we leave?" she asked. Morrison's smile widened. "Tomorrow morning? Hope you're ready for hell, Lieutenant, because that's exactly where we're going." The flight to New York left from a private military airfield outside Tucson at 0600 hours. Lily sat in the back of the transport with her left arm in a sling, pain medication making everything feel distant and unreal. Marcus was across from her with 12 stitches in his forehead and a prescription for sedatives he refused to take. Torres sat between them looking like death warmed over, and Morrison was up front coordinating with her team through an encrypted tablet. "This is insane," Marcus said for the 3rd time. "We're flying into a city where a billionaire has unlimited resources and every reason to kill us. That's not strategy, that's assisted suicide." "It's the only move that matters," Morrison replied without looking up. "Cross thinks he's untouchable, thinks his money and connections make him immune to consequences. We're going to prove him wrong in front of 23 grand jurors and a federal judge. And if he kills us first, then he goes down for murder 1 instead of conspiracy. Either way, he loses." Lily closed her eyes and tried not to think about the desert, the crash, the bodies. Her shoulder was a constant throb of agony despite the medication. Every bump of turbulence sent fresh waves of nausea through her stomach. But the physical pain was manageable. The other kind, the kind that came from watching people die because of choices she'd made, that was harder to compartmentalize. "You okay?" Torres asked quietly. "No." "Good. Means you're still human." He shifted his weight, wincing. "I've been doing this for 12 years. The day it stops bothering me is the day I retire." "How close are you to that day?" He smiled without humor. "Getting closer every hour." They landed at a secure facility in New Jersey, and were immediately transferred to armored vehicles with FBI tactical teams front and back. The convoy rolled through industrial zones and residential neighborhoods while Morrison briefed them on the plan. Grand jury testimony starts at 1400 hours. Federal Courthouse in Lower Manhattan. We go in through the underground garage, bypass public entry, minimize exposure. She pulled up schematics on her tablet. Building security is handled by federal marshals. No private contractors, no local police, nobody cross can compromise. You'll be in the jury room for approximately 2 hours answering questions under oath. What kind of questions? Lily asked. Everything. The medical records you analyzed, the assault on the hospital, the attack at Dr. Webb's home, the contractors who tried to kill you in Arizona. Morrison looked at her steadily. They're going to ask about everybody you put down, every round you fired, every second of combat. And you're going to answer truthfully because that's how we build the case that Cross ordered your death. Marcus cleared his throat. What happens to us after we testify? Witness protection if you want it. New identities, relocation, federal stipend until the trial concludes. Morrison paused. Or you can go home and take your chances, but I wouldn't recommend it. How long until trial? 6 to 8 months, assuming Cross's lawyers don't drag it out longer. So we disappear for a year, Marcus said flatly. Abandon our lives, our careers, everything. That's the reward for doing the right thing. The reward is staying alive, Morrison corrected. Everything else is negotiable. They crossed into Manhattan just after noon. The city pressed in around them, steel and glass and millions of people living lives that had nothing to do with defense contractors or dead soldiers or whistleblowers running for their lives. Lily watched it all slide past the bulletproof windows and felt completely disconnected from it, like she was watching a movie instead of living in it. The courthouse was an imposing granite structure that looked like it had been built to intimidate. The convoy descended into the underground garage where more agents were waiting. Morrison led them through concrete corridors and security checkpoints until they reached a secure waiting room with no windows and furniture that looked borrowed from a prison. You've got 90 minutes, Morrison said. Get your head straight. Review your testimony if you need to. Don't talk to anyone except each other and me. Then she was gone, and they were alone with the silence. Torres stretched out on one of the benches with his crutches on the floor beside him. This is the part where you're supposed to have doubts. Question whether it's worth it. Wonder if you should just run. I'm past that, Lily said. Yeah, I can tell. He closed his eyes. For what it's worth, you did good. Better than good. Most people would have folded when the hit teams showed up. I'm not most people. No, you're really not. Marcus was pacing, burning off nervous energy. What happens if Cross sends people here? To the courthouse? Then they die, Torres said simply. There's 50 federal agents in this building right now. All of them armed, all of them pissed off that a billionaire thinks he can murder witnesses in federal custody. Cross would have to send an army to get through them. That's not as reassuring as you think it is. At 13:30, Morrison returned with 2 attorneys from the Justice Department and a woman in her 50s who introduced herself as the lead prosecutor on the Sterling Capital case. Her name was Diane Kerrigan, and she had the kind of eyes that suggested she'd spent a career putting powerful people in prison and enjoyed every second of it. Let's be clear about what we're doing here, Kerrigan said without preamble. This grand jury is our chance to secure an indictment against Jonathan Cross for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and racketeering. Your testimony provides the direct link between Sterling Capital's money and Talon Securities' actions. Without you, we have circumstantial evidence. With you, we have a case. No pressure, Marcus muttered. Exactly. No pressure, just the truth. Kerrigan looked at Lily. They're going to ask about your military background, your combat experience, the skills that allowed you to survive multiple assassination attempts. Some jurors might question whether you're credible or just a trained killer trying to justify violence. I am a trained killer, Lily said, but I didn't start this fight. Good. Say that. Own it. The jurors need to see you're not hiding behind some noble victim narrative. You fought back because that's what you do. Kerrigan checked her watch. Questions? What happens if Cross sends lawyers to interfere? They can't. Grand jury proceedings are closed. No defendants, no defense attorneys, just witnesses and jurors and prosecutors. She smiled coldly. Cross has no idea what you're going to say until the indictment is unsealed. By then it'll be too late. At 13:55, they walked Lily into the grand jury room. 23 civilians sat in tiered seating looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. A court reporter waited at a small desk. Kerrigan stood near the front with a stack of documents and a laptop connected to a projector. "Please state your name for the record," Kerrigan said. Lily sat in the witness chair with her arm in a sling and tried not to think about how exposed she felt. "Emily Vaughn. I go by Lily Monroe in civilian life." "And your occupation?" "Registered nurse, emergency department at Mercy Ridge Medical Center in Phoenix, Arizona." "Prior to your civilian career, what was your profession?" "I was a combat medic in the United States Army, Special Operations Command, rank of lieutenant when I was discharged." Kerrigan pulled up the first document, Lily's military service record. Awards, commendations, combat deployments, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, 1 in Syria that was still partially classified. "Would you say you're qualified to analyze combat casualty reports?" "Yes." "And medical autopsy findings related to weapons malfunctions?" "Yes." Kerrigan walked her through the analysis she'd performed at Walter Reed, the falsified reports, the pattern of ammunition failures, the 43 soldiers who died because Apex Strategic Solutions cut corners and Sterling Capital bankrolled the whole operation. She showed autopsy photos that made half the jurors look away and field reports that made the other half angry. Then came the hard part. On the night of November 7th, you were attacked at Dr. Marcus Webb's residence in Phoenix. Can you describe what happened? Lily told them everything. The phone call, the brick through the window, the assault team that came with military weapons and zero hesitation. She described shooting 3 men in the alley, taking position in the neighbor's house, firing on hostiles while Santos and Keller held the line below. "How many people did you kill that night?" Kerrigan asked. 3 confirmed, possibly 4. "And you felt that was justified?" "They came to murder me and everyone protecting me. So yes, it was justified." One of the jurors, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain, raised her hand. "Were you afraid?" Lily looked at her directly. "No, I was trained. Fear comes later." "Did it come later?" "Yes." The woman nodded slowly, satisfied. Kerrigan moved to the Arizona attack. The convoy. The crash. The Talon contractors who'd tried to finish them in the desert. The FBI intervention that saved their lives. Based on your analysis of all these events, who do you believe ordered these attacks? "Jonathan Cross," Lily said, "either directly or through intermediaries at Sterling Capital Partners. He had the most to lose from our testimony. He had the resources to hire Talon security, and he had the connections to know where we'd be and when." "How can you be certain?" "Because we were on a classified military installation when they found us. That level of intelligence doesn't come cheap or easy. Someone with serious money and serious access gave them our location." Lily leaned forward. "Cross wanted us dead before we could testify. He failed. Now he's going to pay for it." Kerrigan smiled. "Thank you, Lieutenant Vaughn. No further questions." Lily walked out of that room feeling lighter than she had in days. Marcus went in next, then Torres. Each of them told their piece of the story: the hospital attack, the home invasion, the conspiracy that reached from battlefield to boardroom. By the time they finished, it was past 6 p.m., and the grand jury looked exhausted. Morrison met them in the waiting room with news. "The jury's deliberating. Should have an indictment by tonight." "That fast?" Marcus asked. "You gave them everything they needed, cross-ordered hits on federal witnesses, and got caught on tape doing it. The Talon contractors we arrested are already flipping, offering testimony in exchange for reduced sentences." Morrison's expression was grim satisfaction. "He's done. Question is whether he's smart enough to realize it." The answer came 3 hours later. The grand jury returned with indictments on all charges: conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. The list went on for 2 pages. Federal marshals were dispatched to Sterling Capital headquarters with arrest warrants. The media got wind of it and descended on Cross's office building like locusts. Lily watched the news coverage on Morrison's tablet. Cameras showed federal agents entering the building, showed Cross's lawyers scrambling to respond. showed the man himself being led out in handcuffs at 9:30 p.m., while reporters screamed questions and flashbulbs turned night into day. "How does it feel?" Torres asked. "I don't know yet," Lily admitted. "Ask me when he's convicted." But Cross wasn't done fighting. His legal team filed motions to dismiss, argued the evidence was circumstantial, claimed the grand jury had been prejudiced by inflammatory testimony, demanded bail on the grounds that Cross was a pillar of the community with no flight risk. The judge denied every motion and set trial for 4 months out. Then Cross's lawyers pivoted. They filed civil suits against Lily, Torres, Marcus, and Morrison personally. Defamation, malicious prosecution, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The amounts were staggering, $50 million per defendant. The message was clear. Even if Cross went to prison, he'd bankrupt everyone who'd put him there. "Can he do that?" Marcus asked when the papers were served. "He can try," Morrison said. "Won't win, but he can make it expensive and painful and drag it out for years." She looked at them seriously. "This is what happens when you go after someone with unlimited resources. They weaponize the legal system itself." "So what do we do?" "We finish what we started. We testify at trial. We watch him get convicted. And then we let the Justice Department's lawyers handle the civil bullshit." Morrison stood. "In the meantime, you're still in protective custody until sentencing. Could be 6 months. Could be a year." "A year," Marcus repeated hollowly. "Could be worse. Could be dead." They spent the next week in a safe house in Connecticut that felt more like a prison than protection. Federal agents rotated shifts outside. Lawyers came and went with depositions and prep materials. The media circus continued, talking heads debating whether Cross was a criminal mastermind or a victim of overzealous prosecution. His PR team was working overtime, planning stories about ambitious federal prosecutors and unreliable military witnesses with PTSD. "They're trying to discredit you," Torres said one morning while they watched another segment on cable news. A retired general was on screen questioning Lily's mental stability based on her combat record. "Let them try. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence doesn't matter if the jury doesn't believe it. And Cross's lawyers are going to paint you as an unstable veteran with a hero complex who killed contractors in self-defense that wasn't actually necessary." Lily turned away from the television. "What do you want me to do? Apologize for surviving?" "I want you to be ready for them to attack everything you are and everything you've done, because that's what's coming." He was right. The trial started on a cold March morning with media trucks blocking half of lower Manhattan and protesters on both sides of the courthouse steps. Some carried signs supporting Cross, "Innocent until proven guilty," and "Stop the witch hunt." Others supported the whistleblowers, "Justice for our soldiers," and "Billionaires aren't above the law." Lily walked through the crowd with federal marshals on all sides, ignoring the cameras and the shouted questions. Inside, the courtroom was packed with reporters, lawyers, and spectators who'd waited hours for seats. Cross sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking calm and confident like this was just another business meeting. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Kerrigan presented the evidence methodically. Financial records linking Sterling Capital to Talon Security, encrypted communications ordering surveillance on federal witnesses, testimony from Talon contractors who'd flipped and admitted Cross had personally approved the assassination contracts. She showed autopsy photos of dead soldiers and played recordings of grieving families. She walked the jury through every dollar and every death. Cross's lawyers fought back hard. They argued the contractors had acted independently, claimed Sterling's payments to Talon were legitimate security expenses, suggested Lily had overreacted and used excessive force, put expert witnesses on the stand who testified that the medical evidence was ambiguous and the conspiracy narrative was speculative. Then Lily took the stand. Cross's lead attorney was a man named Harrison Vale, 60-something, silver-tongued, and expensive enough that his hourly rate could fund a small country. He approached the witness box with the confidence of someone who'd destroyed better witnesses than her. "Miss Monroe? Or is it Lieutenant Vaughn? You seem to use both names." "I use Lily Monroe professionally. Emily Vaughn is my legal name." "Which should we call you?" "Whichever makes you feel better." A few jurors smiled. Vale didn't. "You've testified that you killed 6 men during the attack on Dr. Webb's residence. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you felt this was justified?" "They came to kill me. I defended myself. Did you attempt to retreat, to de-escalate, to call for help before resorting to lethal force? I did call for help. They were jamming communications. And there's no retreating when armed men are burning down the house around you. Vale paced, hands behind his back. You have extensive combat training, correct? Yes. Training that includes killing enemy combatants? Among other things. Is it fair to say you're comfortable with violence? Lily met his eyes. I'm comfortable surviving. Violence is just the tool I use when people try to kill me. And how many people have you killed in your career? Ballpark figure. Kerrigan objected. The judge sustained it, but Vale had made his point, planted the seed that Lily was a killer first and a witness second. He went after her mental health next, asked about her PTSD diagnosis, her discharge circumstances, whether she'd received treatment, whether she was medicated, whether she might have overreacted to perceived threats because of her condition.
PTSD doesn't make me paranoid, Lily said. It makes me hypervigilant. I notice threats other people miss. That's why I'm alive, and the men who tried to kill me are dead. Or perhaps you're alive because you're a trained killer who saw violence where none existed? The bodies in the morgue suggest otherwise. Vale's expression hardened. Are you proud of what you did? I'm proud I survived. I'm proud I protected innocent people. Whether I'm proud of killing, she paused. Ask me when I stop having nightmares about it. The honesty landed. Several jurors nodded. Vale changed tactics. You stand to benefit significantly from Mr. Cross's conviction, don't you? Book deals, movie rights, speaking fees? I stand to benefit from not being murdered. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters.
The cross-examination went on for 6 hours across 2 days. Vale attacked her credibility, her motives, her methods. But he couldn't shake the core truth. Cross had ordered her death, and she'd survived to testify about it. Torres and Marcus testified next. Then FBI agents who'd investigated Sterling Capital. Then Talon contractors who'd been arrested and offered deals. One by one, they built a picture of a conspiracy so vast and so calculated that even Cross's lawyers started looking nervous. The closing arguments came 3 weeks after the trial started. Kerrigan summarized the evidence, connected the dots, and told the jury that Jonathan Cross had tried to murder federal witnesses to protect his fortune. Vale argued reasonable doubt, government overreach, and suggested the real criminals were the Talon contractors who'd acted without authorization. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the foreman was a middle-aged man with glasses and a teacher's patient expression. He stood when the judge asked for the verdict. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged her gavel. Cross's face went white. On the charge of racketeering? Guilty. Obstruction of justice? Guilty. 8 charges. 8 guilty verdicts. Cross sat there like he'd been shot, his lawyers already whispering about appeals while federal marshals moved to take him into custody. Lily watched from the gallery as they led him away. He looked small, suddenly, diminished, just another criminal in handcuffs, instead of a billionaire who'd thought himself untouchable. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed them. Kerrigan gave a statement about justice being served. Morrison talked about the importance of protecting whistleblowers. Torres and Marcus declined to comment. Lily pushed through the crowd without stopping, head down, saying nothing. She'd done what she came to do. The rest was just noise. But it wasn't over yet. Cross's sentencing was set for 6 weeks later. His lawyers filed appeal after appeal. Everyone denied. Sterling Capital Partners collapsed within days. Investors fled, contracts were canceled, and the company that had been worth $43 billion was dismantled and sold for parts. The other defense contractors implicated in the conspiracy, Apex, Northbridge, Vector, all faced their own investigations and prosecutions. 53 dead soldiers were finally getting justice. The sentencing hearing was quieter than the trial. Fewer reporters, fewer spectators. Just the families of the dead soldiers filling the gallery and Cross standing before the judge in prison orange instead of tailored suits. Mr. Cross, you orchestrated a conspiracy that resulted in the deaths of 53 American soldiers and attempted to murder multiple federal witnesses to cover it up, the judge said. The scope of your crimes is staggering. The harm you've caused is immeasurable.
and the sentence must reflect the severity of your actions. She gave him 45 years, no parole, no early release. 45 years in federal prison for a man who was already 62 years old. He'd die behind bars. Cross stared at the judge like she'd spoken a foreign language. Then he looked at Lily sitting in the second row, and for just a moment his mask slipped. She saw rage there, hatred, the face of a man who couldn't accept that he'd lost. "This isn't over," he mouthed silently. Lily stared back and said nothing. Later, outside the courthouse with Torres and Marcus and Morrison, she let herself feel it for the first time. The weight lifting, the tension releasing, the knowledge that she'd fought and survived and won. "What now?" Marcus asked. "Now we go home," Morrison said. "Real home. Not safe houses. You're free to resume your lives." "Just like that?" "Just like that. Cross is in prison, his organization is dismantled, the remaining threats are neutralized." She looked at Lily. "You did good, Lieutenant. Better than anyone expected." "I'm not a lieutenant anymore." "No, you're something better. You're someone who stood up when everyone else was too scared to move." Morrison offered her hand. "Thank you for your service. Both kinds." Lily shook it. "Thank you for keeping us alive." Torres limped over on his crutches, grinning despite the obvious pain. "Drinks tonight? Celebrate not being dead?" "I don't drink," Lily said. "Coffee then. Bad coffee. Hospital cafeteria coffee, whatever you want." She smiled. "Coffee sounds good." They started walking toward the street where FBI vehicles were waiting to drive them home. Real home. Not hiding, not running, just living. But Lily made it 3 steps before her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then she thought about cross-mouthing, "This isn't over," and she picked up. "Monroe." Silence. Then breathing. Then a voice she didn't recognize, young, male, nervous. "Lieutenant Vaughn, my name is David Park. I'm a data analyst at the Justice Department. I need to tell you something about Jonathan Cross. Something they're not making public." Lily's stomach dropped. "What?" Cross had a partner, someone higher up the chain who bankrolled the whole operation and helped coordinate the cover-up. Someone the prosecutors don't know about because the evidence is buried in encrypted files we just cracked open. Park's voice was shaking. "I'm sending you a document right now. Read it. Then decide what you want to do, because if this gets out, the entire case could collapse on appeal." The phone buzzed. File received. Lily opened it with trembling hands. Read the first page, then the second, then the third. Her vision blurred. Marcus saw her expression change. "Lily? What's wrong?" She looked up at him, at Torres, at Morrison standing there victorious and satisfied. Looked at the courthouse behind them where Cross was being processed for transport to federal prison. Looked at the file on her phone that proved everything they'd just won was built on a foundation that was about to crack. "We have a problem," she said quietly. Morrison read the document 3 times, her face going from confusion to disbelief to something that looked like fury mixed with nausea. Torres leaned over her shoulder, his expression darkening with every line. Marcus just stood there, looking lost. "This can't be right," Morrison said finally. "This has to be fake." "It's not fake," Lily replied. She'd already traced the file headers, checked the encryption signatures, verified the source code. Park pulled it from Sterling Capital's server backups, financial transfers, encrypted communications, meeting logs, all of it pointing to one person who was feeding cross-intelligence about witness locations, trial strategies, and FBI operations. "Who?" Marcus asked. Lily turned the phone so they could all see the name at the top of the document. Deputy Director Kenneth Voss, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The silence that followed was absolute. "That's impossible," Morrison whispered. "Voss has been with the Bureau for 30 years. He's led every major corruption investigation since—" She stopped. "Since he took over the criminal division 8 years ago. Right after Sterling Capital made a $2 million donation to his wife's nonprofit," Lily added. "The document lays it out. Cross bought him slowly, campaign donations, speaking fees, board positions for family members. By the time we started investigating Apex, Voss was already compromised." Torres grabbed his crutches and moved to the curb like he needed distance from the information. "How deep does this go?" "Deep enough that he knew we were at Fort Huachuca before the assault team hit us."
Deep enough that he had access to grand jury testimony before it was sealed. Deep enough, Lily's voice cracked. Deep enough that every time we thought we were safe, we were actually being tracked by someone inside the investigation. Morrison was already on her phone, calling someone. The conversation was short and tense. When she hung up, her expression was granite. I just spoke to the FBI director. Voss is being arrested within the hour. They're seizing his communications, freezing his accounts, and launching an internal investigation. She looked at Lily. How did Park get this information to you and not his supervisors? Because his supervisors report to Voss. Park said he tried going through channels and got shut down, so he went around them. Lily pocketed her phone. Question is, what happens to Cross's conviction if we can prove the deputy director was feeding him intelligence? His lawyers will file for mistrial, argue prosecutorial misconduct, claim the entire case was tainted by FBI corruption. Morrison's jaw was tight. We could lose everything. No, Torres said. He turned back to face them, leaning heavily on his crutches. We don't lose. We pivot. We add Voss to the conspiracy charges and prosecute them together. Show the jury that Cross's network went so high that even the FBI wasn't safe from corruption. That'll take months, maybe years. Then it takes years. Because if we let Cross walk on a technicality, every soldier who died was killed for nothing. Torres looked at Lily. You didn't survive this long to give up now. She wanted to argue, wanted to say she was done, finished, exhausted. But the faces of those 53 dead soldiers were still in her head, and Torres was right. Walking away now would make their deaths meaningless. What do you need from me? She asked. Morrison exhaled slowly. Everything. Full deposition about Voss's access to the investigation. Timeline of every leak that endangered witnesses. Every piece of intelligence that shouldn't have made it to Cross but did. She looked at them all. And you need to be ready for this to get ugly. Voss has friends in high places. He'll fight back. Let him fight, Lily said. I'm tired of running. The arrest of Deputy Director Kenneth Voss made the Cross conviction look like a traffic stop by comparison. Federal agents stormed FBI headquarters and dragged him out in handcuffs while cameras captured every second. The media went insane. Politicians demanded investigations. The FBI director held a press conference promising accountability and transparency while looking like he wanted to crawl into a hole. And Cross's lawyers filed for a mistrial within 12 hours. The hearing happened fast. Emergency session with the same judge who'd sentenced Cross. Except this time, he was present via video link from federal prison, wearing an orange jumpsuit and a smile that made Lily want to put a fist through the screen. Your Honor, Harrison Vale began, newly discovered evidence proves that a senior FBI official was actively sabotaging the investigation and feeding confidential information to my client. This represents a fundamental violation of due process and warrants immediate dismissal of all charges. Kerrigan stood calm and prepared. Your Honor, the defense is conflating two separate issues. Yes, Deputy Director Voss was corrupt. Yes, he fed information to Mr. Cross. But none of that changes the underlying evidence of Cross's guilt. The soldiers are still dead. The cover-up still happened. The assassination attempt still occurred. Voss's corruption doesn't erase Cross's crimes. It adds to them. The judge looked between them, then at the file in front of her. Ms. Kerrigan, do you have evidence linking Cross and Voss directly? We do, Your Honor. Financial records, communications, and testimony from witnesses who observed their coordination. We're prepared to file amended charges that include both defendants in a single conspiracy. And the defense's position? Vale's smile faded. We maintain that any evidence obtained through a corrupted investigation is inadmissible. Then we'll have an evidentiary hearing to determine what stays and what goes. In the meantime, Mr. Cross remains in custody and his conviction stands pending review. The judge looked directly at the video screen. Mr. Cross, I suggest you prepare for the possibility that your situation is about to get significantly worse. Cross's smile disappeared. The amended prosecution took 4 months. 4 months of depositions and hearings and legal battles while Lily tried to return to normal life in Phoenix. Mercy Ridge Medical Center welcomed her back with a press conference and a plaque dedicating the emergency department in honor of the soldiers who died from Apex's faulty ammunition. Marcus returned to his position as trauma chief and somehow managed to avoid making it weird when they worked together. But normal was impossible to reclaim completely. Patients recognized her. Reporters camped outside her apartment. Strangers thanked her for her service or accused her of being a government plant. She'd become a symbol for justice, for corruption, for military accountability, for whistleblower protection, and symbols didn't get to be invisible. You could move, Marcus suggested one night after a particularly brutal shift. Change your name again. Disappear. I tried that already. Didn't take. So what are you going to do? My job. Save lives. Try not to think about the fact that 53 soldiers died because someone decided profit mattered more than people. She pulled off her gloves. What are you going to do? Same thing, but with slightly more humility than before. He smiled tiredly. Turns out getting shot at changes your perspective on what matters. Yeah, it does. The joint trial of Jonathan Cross and Kenneth Voss started in August. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Financial transfers between Sterling Capital and Voss's offshore accounts, encrypted messages coordinating witness surveillance, recordings of phone calls where Voss provided classified information about FBI operations. They showed how Voss had compromised the investigation from the inside, how Cross had used that intelligence to target whistleblowers, and how together they had orchestrated a conspiracy that killed soldiers and silenced witnesses. The defense fought hard, argued entrapment, selective prosecution, government overreach, put character witnesses on the stand who swore Voss was a dedicated public servant being railroaded by ambitious prosecutors. Then Lily testified again. This time she walked the jury through every leak, every time a safe house location had been compromised, every moment when hostiles showed up exactly where they shouldn't have been able to find her. She connected the dots between Voss's access to FBI intelligence and the assassination attempts that followed, showing how Cross's contractors always seemed to be one step ahead, because someone inside the investigation was keeping them informed. Deputy Director Voss betrayed everything the FBI stands for, she said, and Jonathan Cross paid him to do it. Together, they tried to murder federal witnesses to protect a billion-dollar conspiracy. They failed. Now they need to answer for it. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, they found both defendants guilty on all counts. Cross got 15 years added to his sentence, 60 years total, which meant he'd die in prison decades before parole was even possible. Voss got 25 years for corruption, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The judge showed no mercy. You took an oath to uphold the law, she told Voss. Instead, you sold that oath to the highest bidder and endangered the lives of people you swore to protect. The sentence must reflect not just your crimes, but the betrayal of public trust they represent. Voss stared straight ahead, expressionless. Cross looked at Lily one last time with pure hatred in his eyes. She stared back and felt nothing except tired relief. Outside the courthouse, families of the dead soldiers held a memorial service. 53 names read aloud. 53 candles lit. Mothers and fathers and widows and children standing together while speakers talked about sacrifice and justice and making sure their loved ones didn't die for nothing. Torres gave a speech about accountability. Morrison talked about the importance of protecting whistleblowers. Then someone asked if Lily wanted to say anything. She almost declined, almost walked away. But then she saw their faces, the families who'd lost sons and daughters and husbands and wives, to a conspiracy that valued profit over people. And she stepped up to the microphone. I didn't know your soldiers, she said. I never met them, but I've carried their names with me every day since I learned how they died. 53 people who served their country and trusted their equipment and were betrayed by the very system that was supposed to protect them. She paused. What happened to them was murder. And we made sure the people responsible paid for it. That doesn't bring them back. Nothing can. But maybe it means the next soldier won't die because someone cut corners to save money. Maybe it means their sacrifice actually changed something. By mimo, mamesite. The crowd was silent. I was a combat medic for 10 years, Lily continued. My job was keeping people alive when everything was trying to kill them. I failed more times than I succeeded, but I never stopped trying because that's what you do when people depend on you. You show up, you fight, and you don't quit no matter how bad it gets. She looked at the families. Your soldiers showed up, they fought, they didn't quit, and neither did we. That's how we honor them, by refusing to let their deaths be meaningless. She stepped back from the microphone to silence, then applause that started quietly and built until it echoed off the courthouse walls.
Later, after the memorial ended and the crowds dispersed, Lily found herself sitting on the courthouse steps with Torres and Marcus, watching the sun set over Manhattan. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Do we go back to pretending we're normal?" "I don't think we get to be normal anymore," Torres replied. "Not after this." "Then what do we get to be?" "Whatever we want." Torres looked at Lily. "You could stay military. Pentagon's been calling. They want experienced combat medics to train the next generation. Full rank restoration, good pay, chance to make sure what happened to those 53 soldiers never happens again." "I'm done with uniforms." "Fair enough. What about consulting? Private security firms are always looking for people with your skill set who aren't crazy or corrupt." "I'm staying where I am. Mercy Ridge, emergency department, saving lives one shift at a time." Lily stood, brushing off her pants. "That's what I'm good at. That's what matters. Everything else, the trials, the testimony, the media circus, that was just making sure I could keep doing it." Marcus stood too. "Then I guess we're colleagues again." "Guess so. Try not to yell at me this time. No promises. But I'll try to listen when you tell me I'm wrong." He smiled. "Which will be never, obviously." Torres laughed, then winced and grabbed his side. "I need to get back to physical therapy before my body falls apart completely. Stay in touch?" "Always." They parted ways at the subway station. Torres headed uptown to his apartment. Marcus caught a train to the airport for his flight back to Phoenix. And Lily walked through Manhattan streets as evening settled in, anonymous again in a city of millions, nobody recognizing her or caring who she was or what she'd done. It felt perfect. Her phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Monroe. Lieutenant Vaughn? This is Sergeant Paula Martinez, Army Recruiting Command. I'm calling on behalf of families who've been following your case. We've had over 200 active duty soldiers reach out asking how they can report safety concerns about equipment and contractors without retaliation." A pause. "Would you be willing to help set up a whistleblower protection program? Teach soldiers how to speak up when they see something wrong?" Lily stopped walking, stood there on a Manhattan sidewalk while pedestrians flowed around her like water around a stone. Thought about 53 dead soldiers and the system that failed them. Thought about Torres nearly dying in her ER. Thought about her own close calls and the realization that sometimes doing the right thing meant risking everything. "I'm just a nurse," she said. "With respect, ma'am, you're a lot more than that. You're someone who stood up when it mattered. Soldiers need to know they can do the same without getting killed or buried for it." Lily closed her eyes, took a breath, made a decision. "Send me the details. I'll look at it." "Thank you, Lieutenant. I'll be in touch." The line went dead. Lily pocketed her phone and kept walking, heading toward the hotel where she'd spend one more night before flying home to Phoenix and resuming her life as a civilian ER nurse who nobody would remember in 6 months once the news cycle moved on. Except she would remember, and the families of those 53 soldiers would remember. And maybe that was enough. 6 months later, Lily stood in front of 200 active duty soldiers at Fort Benning, teaching the first session of a whistleblower protection course that the Department of Defense had made mandatory for all military personnel. She talked about recognizing corruption, reporting safety violations, protecting yourself when powerful people wanted you silenced. Some of the soldiers looked skeptical. Others looked terrified. But a handful, looked determined, like they'd been waiting for someone to tell them it was okay to speak up about the things they'd seen and the dangers they'd been afraid to report. After the session, a young private approached her nervously. "Ma'am, I have a question about reporting procedures." "Go ahead." "What if the thing I'm reporting could get people fired or ruin careers?" Lily looked at the kid, 20 years old, maybe less, carrying the weight of something he shouldn't have to carry alone. "Then you report it anyway, because if it's dangerous enough to ruin careers, it's dangerous enough to kill soldiers. And dead soldiers don't get to ruin anybody's career. They just get buried." The private nodded slowly. "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me. Just do the right thing. And if anyone tries to stop you..." She smiled. "Remember, you're not alone." That night, back in her hotel room, Lily sat on the bed and finally let herself feel it all. The exhaustion, the grief, the cost of standing up when it would have been easier to stay down. She'd lost her anonymity, her safety,
and 3 years of carefully constructed normalcy. She'd killed people and watched friends nearly die, and testified in trials that would haunt her for the rest of her life. But 53 soldiers were getting justice, and the next soldier who saw something wrong would know they could speak up without being silenced. That had to count for something. Her phone rang. Marcus. Hey, how's the military life? Temporary. How's Phoenix? Hot. Busy. Currently short-staffed because some nurse decided to moonlight as a whistleblower protection consultant. She sounds like a troublemaker. The worst. But we're holding her position anyway. Trauma Bay's not the same without someone to tell me when I'm being an arrogant jackass. Lily smiled. I'll be back next week. Try not to kill anyone before then. No promises. Stay safe, Monroe. You too, Webb. She hung up and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened since that night in the emergency department when she'd grabbed a scalpel and saved a dying soldier and destroyed her own cover in the process. She'd been nobody then. A ghost. An invisible night shift nurse hiding from a past she couldn't escape. She was still nobody in most ways. No fame, no fortune, no movie deals or book contracts despite the offers. Just a combat medic who'd done her job and refused to look away when corruption tried to silence her. But sometimes being nobody was exactly the right thing to be. Because nobody expected anything from you. Nobody controlled your choices. Nobody could take away your ability to stand up and say that some things mattered more than safety or money or staying quiet. Things like justice, like accountability, like making sure soldiers didn't die preventable deaths because someone decided profit mattered more than lives. Lily closed her eyes and let sleep take her, knowing that tomorrow she'd wake up and teach another group of soldiers how to be brave when bravery cost everything. She'd go back to Phoenix and work overnight shifts saving lives one patient at a time. She'd live with the nightmares and the scars and the knowledge that she'd done something most people would have been too afraid to attempt. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Because in the end, heroism wasn't about being fearless or perfect or always making the right call. It was about showing up when things went bad, doing the job that needed doing, and refusing to quit even when quitting would have been easier. It was about standing in the trauma bay with a scalpel in your hand and a dying patient on the table and saying that no, this person doesn't die tonight, not on my watch. It was about being the person who stayed when everyone else ran. And Lily Monroe, formerly Lieutenant Emily Vaughn, combat medic, whistleblower, and the woman who'd brought down $1 billion conspiracy by refusing to stay silent, had finally figured out that she'd always been that person. She just needed the world to catch up.